So good afternoon, everyone. We're continuing our fiscal year 22 budget review, continuing from this morning. Once again, attending Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios. The time is 1:05, and I'll turn it over to Dina and Michelle. Take it away, ladies.
Thanks very much, Chris. So I have good news and bad news. So the good news is you're down to 2.1. How we got there, I'll explain. So Marissa came forward and said there was an extra position in open, so she cut that one completely. That's the 44, plus she cut out 30 of her overtime. If we take 50% off of open positions that are available, I've made dark marks where the sheriff or others said that they're in the process of hiring, so I took those out of the calculation. So of the available positions that aren't grant funded or already spoken for, we've got 2.4 million. If I take 50% of that, that gives us 1.2 million back. So I went ahead and put that in here. So we have the overtime cut, the position cut, 50% of open positions, plus the new fund balance used today and the cuts that we made in capital, and that's where we're sitting.
So that's our current deficit.
That's our current deficit, yes. Give or take $1 or $2 because we're gonna have to run all these through. We kind of did it on the back of the napkin, so there could be a little sway there, but that's where we're at. We still have that. Now, if ARPA funding comes in, we might be able to handle some of that. Now, I put this out here and I know the sheriff's not gonna be happy with me. So if we take this and we make his overtime budget flat, that gets us down to 1.6.
When you say flat, for the people,
Same as this year.
for the people watching, that doesn't mean to zero.
No, that
No.
means that there would be no increase year over year, that their overtime budget would be identical to what it is now.
I think that's important.
And then Chris had asked, and that said, Chris had asked to see where we are at with overtime right now. It's not pretty. So keep in mind that this year, we took $500,000 and refunded the departments with COVID money. So everybody's got a little bit more overtime in their banks this year than they would have otherwise. So of the budgeted amount, including CARES funding for overtime, we've spent about 2/3 of it,
Okay.
and we've got about that much left. But if you take out the noise from the CARES reimbursements, that's what's left right now, as of today. We are
Okay.
burning a lot of overtime, and we know we are because we have so many open positions. So that's the overtime situation as of today. Now, granted, the open positions number is gonna fluctuate, but 50% is a big bite. And if we take 50%, I'm not real happy about offering this up as well, because you're taking away.
Can't do both.
No, right, exactly. So what I'm saying is, if we don't take that, that's where we're at. And I'm not sure where we're gonna get it.
So my question too is, that's overtime cost before the raises.
Yes,
So once the raises hit, that overtime cost is actually going to be
4% higher.
Yep.
But the
Bingo.
thing is, if we're gonna fund the open positions at 50%, then theoretically, we should have a commensurate decrease in the overtime. Well, not
If we
exactly.
hire.
It's not one for one, I get that, but,
Right.
but there has to be, any way you cut it, even if, they're not gonna fill all those open positions in the next couple, 3 months. It's just not gonna happen with the low
Right.
unemployment rate.
But I'm
So-
only funding these at
At
50%.
50%.
So
Which is
that means
aggressive.
delaying hiring until April.
That's aggressive.
That's very aggressive. That's what I'm saying. With an aggressive bite, if we leave overtime alone, which I think we're gonna need to,
Yes.
if we're gonna take this aggressive of a bite,
Then where are we going to get the rest of the money from?
That's your hard job.
But here's the thing. If you,
You need to call, you need to call your legislators
yeah, good. Not gonna change
because,
this here.
because that's where it is. That's it. And that's a real hard pill to swallow. Now, we can get another 500,000, just a 500,000 if you take the 1% of foregone that you're allowed for maintenance and operations. You can get a 500,000 back, but that still doesn't help you.
So is the Panhandle Health 800 and something thousand still in there?
Yes.
Okay,
But again, we're funding as if we don't have ARPA yet.
correct. No, I understand that, but the caveat there is even if we choose ARPA, we have to maintain that funding level because ARPA will go away. And
Right.
then if we don't have a way to fund that later, then we're gonna be in trouble.
But ARPA has to be spent by.
26.
2026, we got
So
lots of
what we could
time.
do actually, we could put some of that money away and plan for the fact that we're going to have to fund.
Well, like Steve said, you would fund other things and then that excess would go into
In there,
fund
right,
balance for
okay,
later
yes,
use.
yes.
It's a kind of supplanting, if you will, but it's
Yeah,
allowed.
Oh, we have a.
What's the, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jill.
So we have the ARPA funding, and you can spend it through 2026, but it has to be obligated.
By 24.
2024, yeah.
Okay,
Obligated.
that's okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill.
On the overtime, what's the burn rate?
Oh, I didn't actually calculate.
No, that's okay, that's okay. If we know what we spent year to date, we
So
can just
we've
simply divide.
we've spent 1069,600 to date.
And so we're.
And that's
If you-
through all divisions in the
That's
county.
all divisions, but if we look at it from the top, here's your top year-to-date spend. Most of that is, you've got jail, obviously, patrol, 911, DC, because the district court,
The 500,000+ before that you had experimented with,
yeah.
was that all Kcso overtime?
Yes.
Yes, that was keeping their overtime flat year over year, but if we're gonna take
Right.
50% of open positions, we
Yeah, but-
shouldn't be taking that
No,
overtime.
Understood, but what I'm trying to get to is what is their burn, what does Kcso spend in overtime year to date? Do we know that?
We can. So, let's go to sheriff. Sheriff's Division, year-to-date has spent $901,834.
In 8 months?
So if you look at the total for everybody, it's within 100,000
Okay,
of
forget,
the total.
okay, forget the other groups for the moment. So we spent, what, would you say, 980,000 over 8 months? So the quick math, if you divide that out, is what? About 110, 120,000 a month? Mm-hmm. So if you extrapolate, I'm going to call it 110, I'm doing it in my head. So if you add the other 4 months at 110, that's 480,000, round it off to 500, add the 500 to that, and you're at 1.5 mil.
Right.
Now,
And that's
follow
what
me
we budgeted.
carefully.
Okay.
They have open positions, and they're still going to run at approximately 1.5 mil. My point is, you can budget it flat for next year because they're already operating under that system. They're already operating under that burn rate with open positions. So if you budget only 50% for next year and keep this flat, 50% for the open positions and keep this flat, they're no worse off than they are right now. Because they're going to operate half the year without those open positions filled. Well, they're already operating with those open positions unfilled. Yes, in other words, for fiscal '22, we would budget what you're expected to spend in overtime this year. And it's looking like you're going at a rate where you're going to spend about 1.5 mil.
Yes, so
I can't do that, okay?
But
Go ahead.
flat, I think, means what we budgeted last year.
Right, so instead of the ask for 204, it would be 74. And this would come back to help with the deficit. This is where I got the 591. These are the increases year over year. So this is 263, it's budgeted at 525 because they're actually using almost 540.
Right.
So we can keep them flat, but then they're gonna get cut both ways because we're cutting their opens.
But you're not really cutting their opens. Those opens are there now and they're unfilled.
Right.
And
But you're not
chances are they're-
paying for them for 6 months. You're not gonna have them unfunded for 6 months.
I understand that, but I guess what I'm getting at is that if they're able to operate today with the current level of funding in the unfilled positions, why couldn't they do that for the first half of the next fiscal year?
Burnout, employee burnout.
I mean, at some point, if this doesn't get balanced, it's going to come out of the pay. I mean, it's either we're going to bite this bullet or it's going to get bitten one way or another. And
Well, the other part of it too is, you know, speaking realistically, if the sheriff next year comes back and says, I'm gonna run over in overtime, I'm gonna overspend my
we deal
budget,
with it. Then we
we're gonna
deal
have
with
to
it.
fund it. But again, this is a compounding problem year over year, where we're constantly cutting ourselves off at the knees.
Right.
So I would ask the board to consider that 1% of M&O, just because we're so far behind and we're growing so
But
fast.
before we go there, let's look at two other possibilities. We've got the $2 million, okay, and then we have the ARPA funds. Why wouldn't this qualify for one or the other?
You don't want to fund personnel out of temporary funds.
Yep.
Yeah, but the thing is, they're also looking at hiring for the second half of the year, which theoretically should reduce the overtime budget in fiscal '23.
No, because then you're underfunded the next year. Because you're only funding half a position in this year, next year you have to fund for the full position.
position.
That's why we're running into problems now, because we had a lot of mid-year changes
Right.
where we use salary savings, which is great for the current year, but then in the future year, then you've got the full cost.
Right, but when exactly, I have the full cost, but then I can also cut back on the overtime because I have the full cost.
In theory.
Well, hopefully in practice. Because that's the assumption we're making when we budget. Go right ahead, Jill.
So I work for the treasurer. I was doing some math, and I know that you all don't want to collect the foregone, but $500,000 of foregone, $850,000 for Panhandle, 35 for Heritage, you're at 1.385, which is awfully close to the 1.6.
When you say 1.6, we're at 2.1, aren't we?
We're at 2.1 unless you make these flat.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jill, you're assuming we took out that.
If you did that, and then with the foregone, Panhandle, and Heritage, you're,
I understand the foregone. What are you saying about Panhandle?
well, and I know that it would require some juggling because you don't want to have a gap in a couple of years, but the Panhandle budget is 850?
Well, it's going to be 1.6.
Well,
But it's
eventually.
about
No, I'm sorry,
1.2 this year
1.2 this year.
and
Yeah, yeah.
1.6 going forward and whatever it
It's
increases.
about 860 plus approximately 270,000 for the fiscal '22, so
So that brings you over,
about
brings you
just
almost
under
up.
1.1.
it brings you basically up to the 1.6 that you need.
I know, but using
You'd have to
using
do,
one-time funds for ongoing expenses is very scary.
But if you take the foregone, the 1% foregone going forward, then you start backfilling those ongoing costs at $500,000 a pop.
and I'm saying use the Panhandle dollars to balance the budget. That doesn't mean that you can't switch and maybe pay a capital project using the ARPA funds instead of
Right.
Panhandle. Like,
We've just already taken all those out.
I thought,
We funded all of the ARPA stuff with fund balance at this point.
Yeah.
So, but we haven't funded Panhandle Health with fund balance yet.
Right.
Correct.
And but you can juggle the ARPA money, the fund balance money, and the Panhandle budget after the fact, once we have better guidance on how to do it.
Okay, so I think what you're saying is use fund balance to balance the budget and then reimburse ourselves from the ARPA funds
As you are able.
as
Yeah.
we are.
And take the 1% foregone.
Okay, so 1% of foregone is 500.
$500,000
roughly-
bucks.
Yeah, $500,000, thank you. $500,000, I'm going to assume 175,000 people. We're pushing 175. What's the quick math? $3 per person per year.
Well, if you look at
You look at it
parcels,
that way.
96,000 parcels.
I'm sorry, oh, 90, yeah, okay. That's another way to look at it, 96,000 parcels. So, about, yeah, a little over $5 a parcel.
Down to $1 million.
You know, for me, it's easy in one regard. When somebody says, I can't stand your guts, I'll say, please call your legislator. I'd be happy to give you the names. Because that's exactly what's going to happen, because I'm going to forward those calls and say, nice work, guys, this is what happens. And then they'll say, well, you have a bloated budget. And then I'll say, really? How many of you attended? Never mind, don't get me started. Especially when a couple of them have said they don't know what we do.
When's our next deliberation scheduled?
I believe it's the 23rd. We'll know more about ARPA by then. So here's where we're at. Let's see. Okay, so just back of the napkin. So we're assuming we can use ARPA for these things, including Panhandle Health. That gets us there. If we take the 1% foregone and if we flatten out KCSO's overtime for now?
Commissioners, I just got to get this flattening of the overtime straight. When we're talking about flattening the overtime, you're just talking about funding it at the same rate you did last year, right?
Yes,
This
sir.
current
That's
Yes.
correct.
Yes.
Well, and Dina's right, you're gonna cut us on both ends, because despite our open positions, or whoever's, maybe you said it, Leslie, sorry, I better give credit where credit's due, but the bottom line is, that's unrealistic. We spend, and by your own math, right, 15 minutes ago, we spend $1.5 million a year.
Right, yes.
Plus, if you
Not a
cut-
month for the
if you-
fiscal year.
If you dive into the open positions or the frozen positions, or whatever you wanna call it, you're cutting us on both ends. And that's just not gonna work.
No, Dan, I'm not cutting you on both ends because you'd be operating the way you're operating now. Follow
That-
me.
We are operating in the gray zone. Public safety is suffering, our personnel are suffering. We cannot maintain this, and this isn't idle talk. I mean, we are understaffed, all our people are overworked, the overtime speaks to that, and the citizens are not getting what they deserve. I gotta ask the board, what kind of law enforcement do you want? Can somebody tell me? What do you want? Do you want somebody that gets a cop in 20 minutes, or do you want
Dan,
one that gets one in
Dan,
5?
you're looking at the person who championed the raises that you guys got.
That's not
Take it
personal,
easy.
Chris, but that's a fair question. and
Well,
you
Dan,
did
I'm giving you a
champion
fair answer, and what I'm telling you is you're operating that way today. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but there's a taxpayer on the other side of this.
I get
And
it.
somehow we've got to bring this together.
Well, Chris, and it's not personal, but you know I'm gonna say what I gotta say. And the bottom line is, we are reaching a critical point. You cannot continue to operate the way we're operating. I could march 20 deputies in here and have them tell you what it's like. We're doing what we can do on our end to try to get more money out of Hayden, try to bill people where it's possible. We're doing everything we can do, but we cannot continue down this road.
But every time the overtime budget's been overrun, we've always made good on it, and I don't believe that we wouldn't make good on it again. I'm simply saying that you're operating, yes, you're strained today, and I understand that, and I'm saying it's not going to be any different tomorrow, but if you blow that overtime budget, you know we're going to make good on it.
Well, that comes out of the sheriff's pocketbook, so, did you want to speak, sir? Or is that my shut up then?
Pretty much,
Go ahead.
You know, I believe that the board is acting in good faith, and I believe that public safety is important to each of you, and we've heard comments that support that argument. So, however you want to cut this piece of pie, but please know, everything that Dan said is true about our personnel. So, if it's easier to do it this way, pending what funds may be available or not available in the future, you know what? We're in. But please know, we will be coming to you, and we'll be coming to you in a couple of weeks based on overtime projections because of our open positions and the fatigue factor and the burnout factor and their officers' safety factor is very, very real. But however you want to slice it, but do know that we will come to you and saying, hey, public safety is being sacrificed and we need this, this, and this. Trust me, I am doing everything that I can. Non-essential positions are working on the line to make sure that we reduce overtime. It's just how much further can we go is very difficult. I'm actually, I work shifts now, so.
I don't know how we're gonna get there, but I'm really uncomfortable cutting overtime and 50% positions. I don't think that's sustainable. So I think that taking this next week or two off, I'm gonna dig in, look at some different things, and even if we're pinching pennies, even if we say, okay, everybody, look at your travel, it's still gonna move the needle a little bit. It just won't move it quickly. So I think to try to preserve that 2.5 million in raises, I think that we need to look at some different things, and with Zoom and with travel changes and stuff, maybe we can
And
look at some of that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's it. I just want to take a look at a couple different things. And I know everybody gets impatient with this process, but this is, in my opinion, one of the most important things I do all year long. And so I want to do it right, and I want to do it carefully.
We do have transactional detail. Michelle does have she has a data bank, and she can do some summaries by category in the B budget, so you can dig in and look at stuff. We can share that with you. We can share it with all the teams if you're up for that, so people can go in and start looking around and digging around. We may have to onesie-twosie this. So for right now, do we want to just not do that?
I don't want to do both. You want to fund 50%, fine, but then leave overtime whole. You want to cut overtime, then fund the positions wholly. I don't want to do both. I just think that sets us up poorly down the road.
Since it isn't permanent, I want to do both at this point.
Okay.
With the understanding that we're gonna come back.
Okay.
We have to come back.
All right, so we're gonna leave it here. This is about all we can do at this point. We're gonna go in, because we kind of did this back in the napkin today. We're gonna go through the system, reconcile everything, clean it up. We're gonna send out all the transactional detail in a table format, so you can look at it, you can dig in and see those transactions and see if there's any place where you'd like to see, like travel, if you wanted people to cut some travel, or if you wanted people to cut some non-capital, or that kind of stuff. So we'll provide that information to you in the groups so that the groups can take a look. But until our next meeting, I think we'll know more on ARPA. We may know more about the URD closure as far as what money is coming in from that. I don't think it's gonna be a ton. And I'm gonna leave this 1% in here too, because it looks like we're gonna need it.
And I am, as usual, not gonna vote anything with foregone in it.
Okay. Do either of you want me to leave that 1% in or no?
I don't. I'm hoping the URD money will take that place.
I don't know that this URD is big enough to
Yeah,
contribute that much.
I don't either, but we'll know when we get there.
Well, and I think in the next couple of weeks, we'll come up with some other approaches. I would, I wouldn't include the foregone at this point either.
Okay.
You know, it's probably a good approach, but the PR side of it is difficult. But there's just
It
such
is.
there's just such an aversion to foregone, and most people
True.
truly don't understand it, and I get that, but,
It's not a big dollar amount
no,
per
it's
house,
not. But
but it's a psychological.
it rolls
is.
itself into the budget, and it has succeeding year impact.
It's sustainable
Right.
funding source that, I'm just gonna say as your finance director, we need a sustainable funding source. This is a real pinch, and this will continue to be a pinch in future years.
Right.
Just for the record, I'd like to say that on May 22nd, I did look at each of those representatives and state senators, and I did say, give the county and city leaders the tools that they need to be able to build the infrastructure and take care of their employees so we can service this community. Yeah, it could be a bad thing for reelected, but public safety is my #1 priority. And I told them in a public meeting that they need to give you the tools that you need. And with this current legislation, they didn't give you the tools that you
Did
need.
you get any
No, they took
answer
them
for
away,
these
actually.
people?
No. So I encourage every elected official here in Kootenai County to let the state senators and representatives know that you need to give the tools to the commissioners and, quite frankly, the city councils here to do what
Absolutely.
they need to do. This county is different than Elmore County. The one-size-fits-all doesn't work. And it's not gonna work here. We're gonna have major cracks in our service, infrastructure, and public safety if we don't correct this.
Commissioners, I just want to clarify on the 911 side that we're talking about on the open positions. If you're talking about funding those at mid-year, does that mean that if we had a windfall of candidates to be able to fill by October, you would be telling us that we can come back in October and open
Yes,
those
sir.
back up?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make
Me,
sure that
yeah,
we're.
that's
Not
exactly.
You just got
closed. They're
3
just
yeses.
partially
3
funded.
yeses.
Yep.
So you're saying they're partially funded, which means we wouldn't be able to hire till April.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Here,
Absolutely.
Captain, look at it like this. When you get every 100% positions filled October 1, in 12 months, that will not have been sustained. So you will have 6 months of savings potentially in those 12 months. Now, I disagree with the 50%. I think that's too aggressive. I want to go 70%, but we got a lot more work to do here. So I don't know that we can get to 70% at this point. My goal is to have all the positions filled in public safety because that's the #1 thing that the people are looking for. But bottom line, if assessor doesn't get what they need, they don't assess. If treasurer doesn't get what they need, they don't bill. If auditor doesn't get what they need, they don't pay you. So, and if the prosecutor doesn't get what they need, your arrestees are back out. If the judges don't get what they need, you know,
So
It's-
we're the
it's-
only ones who are expendable.
yeah, exactly. So it's a globe, right? It's this ball that we have to fund. And you guys are a very important part of it, but bottom line is we have other things that we have to fund. And so
I
we're just
understand.
trying
I just want
to,
to make sure that we're available when we have the bodies to be able to put in there, that you will fund them
yes.
at that time.
And I would love to have that problem, really.
All right, sounds good.
Nancy?
Now that I'm not behind the camera equipment, I just wanted to clarify something. If you take 50% of the open positions and they're using 1.5 million in overtime this year, you're not, next year, if you cut their overtime, working in the same scenario as you are this year because they are using the whole 1.5 million in overtime. And the one thing you're not taking into consideration right now is if the salary savings they have this year is enough to cover their overtime. Because if it's not, they're working in a deficit already and you're going to be going into that same deficit next year. So I wanted to clarify that. Does that make sense?
In a way, yes.
Okay.
But okay, I've said it 2 or 3 times. Okay, yes, I understand what you're saying.
Oh, okay.
It's not pretty, but
Right
we
as I
understand
kicked
it.
the cord too, so that was
Yeah.
interesting
Nancy.
timing.
Nancy, it's not pretty, but we do understand it.
No, I know you understand. I'm just not sure it's a realistic way to look at it, to cut both 50% of the open positions and their overtime. I don't think.
Yeah, but the thing is, we're talking about a budget, and I think as we just indicated, even though we cut 50% for budgetary purposes, if they get a rush of candidates, they're going to get hired.
Right.
So it's not, we're not pulling the cord on them. We're doing this for budgetary purposes so that we can get to a balance.
But I'm concerned that if they are to fill everything, that the following year, we will not have a funding source to keep it all going.
And I agree with that,
Legitimate
is what I'm
concern.
saying, yes. But we do have the big
That's a
URD coming back year after next to help with funding some of these options. It's just not available this year.
And once again, I'm not really comfortable counting money going forward because of what the legislature did this year. What if they come back next year and say you get 50% of URD or 0% of URD? So we need to be able to fund year to year.
But the thing is, if to Leslie's point, Nancy, you might as well stay here. Hold on. You don't get to sit down yet. Okay, so even if it creates if the positions are open, we're saying these positions need to be filled. If they need to be filled and it's going to create a problem in fiscal '23, then logically you would conclude, then why are we filling them? Okay, what you're saying is, but we're going to need a funding source. Well, if there is a need, you got to find a funding source, right? So that's going to confront us any way you look at it. You're not following me.
No, I am, but that doesn't take away the need and the
Yeah,
services
precisely.
and the jobs that they have to do. That doesn't take away that. So I get that you have to find the money to fund it, and the legislation is making that more difficult, but you still need to find the money. Which, if that means cutting other things, it means cutting other things.
Yeah,
But how many
sustainability is
other
the
thi-
key. Sustainability is the key.
Yeah.
So if we say, okay, we'll cover you if you go over in the new year. If we're pulling that out of fund balance, that's just digging us a bigger
Well,
hole.
precisely. But I think what we're trying to get to, I think what we're trying to understand here is if they fill these open positions, that has to be sustainable. Am I hearing that if they fill these positions in fiscal '22, that we've got a problem going forward in fiscal '23?
Yes.
Then if that's the case, why would you fill them?
But conceivably, there could be.
I get it, you need to do a job. I understand that part of it.
But conceivably, there could be reductions in overtime to help cover some of those costs.
But that's what we were just looking at.
Right, but you're saying if you take 50% of next year's budget, then they shouldn't need all that overtime. And that's not accurate because they're using all of that overtime now.
Precisely, and I'm saying they're going to continue with the present burn rate.
Yes, but you want to take away and make them flat for next year, which means if you cut the 50% of their positions and you take away some of their overtime, then they're going to use the
But I'm
same
not-
burn rate if they have the same positions open.
But we're not cutting their positions. The fact is, they're operating without those positions today. And so I'm just saying, use the current burn rate since they're operating without those positions today until they fill them.
But the salary savings covers their overspend.
Well, that's different. That's
Right,
another
that's why you
dimension.
need that overtime backstop,
Right.
because right now, the fully funded open positions are covering for the overtime that's not budgeted. So if you're gonna cut half of those open positions funding, you have to have the overtime to cover the overtime.
Exactly, that's what I was trying to say. She said it so much better.
Now, sometimes it just,
But we're not cutting the overtime.
but
Just
we are,
keeping it
we're
flat.
cutting
You
it back
wanted to make
to
it
flat.
Yeah,
Which is cutting $500,000 out of it when you're going to need.
no, but the $500,000 was an increase. I was saying to keep the current burn rate.
No, but the increase was merely to reflect what they actually spend.
Yes.
Because we never budget what they actually spend.
Oh, well, okay.
So we're already
Okay,
behind.
all right. Fair
Yes.
enough, because
Yeah.
when we did the calculation based on the burn rate, which I presume is what they're actually spending. Remember the 900,000?
Right,
And
but
I
they
did
only
the
have
math?
20,000 left for
Okay,
the rest
fine.
of the year.
Fair enough, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So are we good? Can I go?
You can rest now.
Thank you.
No, well, how about up here?
Okay, so where are we?
We're having technical difficulties. Would you like to add that, the overtime back in for now?
One or the other. If you want to do 50% of the open positions, then keep the 1.5 in overtime.
Okay, so it's 531 or 591. So it's basically 600,000 of overtime we're going to leave in, which means that our current deficit is 2.1 million.
Still.
Yes.
Yep.
So we can reduce that by $500,000 if we want to take the 1%, but that still puts us at 1.5.
And I don't think we have to make that decision today.
No,
No, but it's coming. Yes.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Anything else you would like us to do, prepare? Look
Yeah,
into-
the next time we go through this, I want to see it by department. I want to see
Okay.
A, B, and C by department.
Okay.
Because for me, because when I look at, and I've said this earlier over lunch, if I look at a skid steer, it's easier for me if I look at it in the context of who's using it and what is it for. And I
Okay.
think you kind of indicated that because you indicated the departments, but I think as we did early on in the process, where you showed it by department, A, B, and C, the summary form, that's easier for me.
Okay, so we can prepare that and send it to you this week,
Okay,
and then you'll have that to review.
got it.
And if you find that you have some breathing room before the next meeting, we can always do a budget meeting in between, before the next one.
Fair enough. When is the next one scheduled for?
I believe is it the 24th? Okay, so let me go out to the schedule. I think it's the 23rd.
The only thing on the 23rd is elected officials. I'm looking at the BOCC.
so we want to do a 1 o'clock that day?
Human resources, what is this?
That would be a good day to do it,
When is it?
23rd,
What day of the week is it?
Wednesday?
Is that a
Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Oh, thank you. Where's that there?
Let me go back, because I had a scheduler here.
Yeah, we blocked out tons and tons of time.
There's been some cancellations.
Okay,
So I show that the next one is on 6/23, but it isn't actually on your calendar.
okay.
Can you make it at 1:30? That should work.
All right, we'll get that going.
Okay.
All right. Do you think we're going to need some more? Because the one after that is Alliant for the insurance on
And we haven't gotten a figure from them
14th,
yet, right?
and then we're done. I mean, we have to be done.
Well, the 14th, we have a 9 a.m. to noon as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do you want to wait that long, or do you want to meet before, in between those two?
Oh, in between, yeah, probably.
Because you've got BOE, but if you have some time in between, let's keep that, we'll keep the conversation
that's
going
fine.
via email, but we might
Yeah.
want to schedule something in between.
I'm hoping we balance at the end of the next meeting.
Me too.
Yep.
But we're
our numbers
flexible.
will be more solid, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Anyone else, anything? Sheriff?
Yes. We've come to a point in time in our dispatch center that we have to develop an action plan on this because it's an area we're hemorrhaging. So I don't know if this is something we should approach HR first with or here, but the problem is significant. Significant. So Dan, I know that we've been discussing about some incentive retention bonuses and what have you. I don't know what strategy we should take, but I'm here to tell you that it is a significant problem. Dispatchers are fleeing, they can't afford to live here. We can't attract them. It is a significant problem, and we can't go without them.
So we have an HR meeting on the 10th. Should have one on the 10th.
Yep. Put it on for HR.
Yep.
So is that
Yep, yep,
sufficient,
yep, yep,
or?
yep.
Oh, the 10th, we're gone. Shoot.
Do you have one this week?
Yeah, so they switched it. Because we've got, so that's this week.
You're thinking of IAC?
Yeah, we have IAC, but they moved, I thought they moved HR because of IAC on the 7th. Look on the 7th, I think.
That's a Monday?
There it is.
Yep,
9 o'clock on the 7th.
yep. So this coming Monday.
So you got time to get it on?
We can get it on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's for currently, but the other thing I wanted to speak to was in fiscal year '22. One of the things that we talked about during the last budget meeting, and one thing that I'm not sure where we stand right now, is even with the idea in mind that you would fund open positions at 50%, and I'm just going to assume that for now, we would be willing to not hire at 911. And the fact of the matter is, we probably can't hire in that 6 months. We can't get them hired and trained at the rate we're going. But what I wanted to make sure is if the board, or to see if the board would entertain letting us use those dollars for that 6 months, for that 50% funded positions for bonuses. The money's there, and we want to pay, you can call it a retention bonus, you can call it whatever you want, but I would like to be able to, or we would like to be able to pay those dispatchers a bonus for all the extra work they're doing under the circumstances. They're working shorthanded, and I just see that as money that's already in the budget. It's money that's sitting there. I just would like to lay that out there to see if the board would entertain that.
So I think we need to separate
year?
the two. Yes,
the
so
current year.
current year, looking at what you have available, I'm fine to entertain retention bonuses. But we can't entertain them for '22 at this point because cutting that 50% is gone to balance the budget. It doesn't exist for bonuses. So let's talk about that on Monday, okay?
Wait, let me be clear on that, though. I'm not talking about the 50% that was cut. I'm talking about using the 50% that's still there, that we're not paying anybody. and
Gotcha.
We don't hire
Oh,
them.
yeah, okay.
We don't hire anybody until June, and I want to use that dollar pool to be able to pay bonuses, not the 100%, just what's there.
Right.
You mean for this fiscal year?
No,
No,
next
for next
For
fiscal
next
year.
fiscal year?
Yeah, we can talk about it on Monday, but what I would want to see is how many bodies you actually think you can get, because, I mean, having bodies there is
Well, there's
as
talk-
crucial as the bonus.
There's talk about placing this into one big pool, and I would like to just voice my opinion on that we would much rather have it in our own personal pool, because we know what to do with it probably better than the board does right now. So, to put all that money in one big pot and let the board, decide what to do would be a consideration I would ask for.
Sure. And at the elected officials meeting, I might not have been clear, but what I wanted is each elected official group to come forward with their divisions that are having the most trouble.
Right, okay.
And so in my mind, and this is just my mind because we haven't had the discussion, is that we do use money from this year to start that retention process.
Agreed, thank you. And then
So-
just looking down the road for '22, that's just something to think about. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just for informational purposes.
welcome.
911 Ops still does have a hiring bonus pool of $10,500 in the budget for 2022.
Okay.
Okay, so that is not in the new position part, that's in the new, the A part.
This is in the changes, yes.
Changes, thank you. Okay. Okay, so that's good to know.
Yep, but that's not retention bonuses, but that is the hiring
Right.
bonuses, and that's why they gave up those frozen
Okay.
positions.
Right.
Anything else? Public comment? None. Time is 1:50. Adjourn. Thanks.
Thank you.